you can see a model where this might look good in theory. Getting it to work in practice for a protracted period, where you've got parties that may be coming into this peacekeeping arrangement, this ceasefire arrangement, who aren't guaranteed to act in good faith. And, I'm thinking of the Russians.
Who's that?
there.
OK. Well, Sir Peter Wall is former Chief of General Staff, head of the British Army from 2010 to 2014 and joins us now. Sir Peter, good evening to you. Thank you for being with us on Times Radio.
Yeah, good evening, Kate.
Is this the right move for the Prime Minister to make? Is it a hand he can offer? Does he have the troops to back up the promise?
I think it's a bold proclamation, knowing, very little at this point about what a peacekeeping mission might entail. There's all sorts of things that have to be resolved for this to be a workable military proposition. And even if were that to be the case, to come to the point of your question, UK's sort of military armoury is not particularly strong. We would find it hard, I think, to sustain a significant force out there for the sort of protracted duration that most peacekeeping operations tend to last. So I think it would be it'll be tough. I think it's also it's an alliance effort, whatever that alliance is, whether it's a coalition of the willing or whether it's built around the JEF or something with a wider international representation that would satisfy Russian interests in terms of potential impartiality, which is a fundamental element of peacekeeping. Very hard to see that being viewed as impartial by the Russians if everyone's coming from Western Europe. And so trying to produce a force that's got the mass to cover the 800-kilometre frontage of a potential ceasefire line, that's quite difficult to envisage how that'll work, especially if it's looking at the upper end of peacekeeping, which is known in the vernacular as peace enforcement, where actually people are prepared to use military force not just for their own self-defence, but actually to reinforce the mandate, whatever that might be.
Yeah, and that's the tricky thing here. We don't really know what we're talking about, do we? Are they literally keeping the peace? Can they fight back, or only if they come under attack? It depends how you want to keep the peace, doesn't it? And that presumably depends on the strength and the capability of the personnel sent out there. You could send, 5,000 very skilled British Army operatives out there who would be more than capable. If it's a peacekeeping light force, maybe you could send more people who don't necessarily have all of the skills needed if they were to enter into combat, for example. So there's lots of questions over this, as I understand it anyway.
Yeah, there's a huge array of questions, starting with, will the force be seen as impartial? Will the parties consent to the plan that is being made in many cases in their absence? So the peacekeepers aren't around the table, the potential peacekeepers, and neither is one of the key parties in the form of the Ukrainians, who are the injured party in the opinion of most sensible people. So it's an odd start point, and an awful lot of things have to get to aligned if we're going to be at the point where people will sign up to this with robust rules of engagement and all the right capabilities to cover not just a long front line, but also all those deeper weapon systems which have become an increasing feature of this war, being launched from places a long way back from the front line. So I'm having difficulty envisaging what this laydown might look like until we've got a lot more detail.
Keir Starmer has again reiterated the need for a US security guarantee. He's just been speaking. There's a pull clip that's just gone out after this meeting with other European leaders in Paris this evening. A US backstop is the only path to peace in Ukraine, he said. Europe must play its role. I'm prepared to consider committing British forces on the ground alongside others if there's a lasting peace agreement. But there must be a US backstop, because a US security guarantee is the only way to effectively deter Russia from attacking Ukraine again. We know the US won't put boots on the ground, won't be part of any peacekeeping force. But can you envisage a picture where they will offer a security guarantee? Because presumably, and you'll have to school me on this, Sir Peter Wall, the US has capabilities which will be needed for that peacekeeping force to be able to operate properly, the US has capability that other European nations don't, which is why it's so important to have this security guarantee.
Yeah, so in the current sort of European security construct, the Americans play a fundamental role. They provide an awful lot of intelligence capability. They provide a lot of very sophisticated technical enablers, and they produce significant amounts of air power and naval and ground forces, whether forward-based in Europe or on call to come across from the continental United States. They have been the backbone of this organization to the point where, as we know, we wouldn't be having this conversation were this point not true, where European nations have been very complacent and relied over heavily on the Americans, hence this whole maelstrom, really. And in that sense, I think, Mr. Trump's absolutely right. He may be going about it in a strange way, but ultimately he's pointing out the error of our ways and giving us a chance now to rectify that in the specific context of this potential peacekeeping operation. And so the sorts of things they might be able to provide are intelligence, support to sophisticated communications, lots of arm's length capabilities, including air cover, for example. But we've had examples in the past where peacekeeping forces on the ground, take, for example, operations in the Balkans, were capped, if you like, with an umbrella of American air power, flying at pretty high altitudes, well out of the fight. And it's quite difficult for that sort of force to operate without tensions emerging. And that's what happened, fun enough, in the Balkans. And it was as a result of that, but tensions between the United Nations operations, which didn't really have any proper teeth, and the surrounding interest that led to a NATO operation, which did actually achieve a very significant effect, but only by threatening the use of artillery and airstrikes against the combatant forces of the various factions in Bosnia at the time in the mid-90s. So you can see a model where this might look good in theory, getting it to work in practice for a protracted period, where you've got parties that may be coming into this peacekeeping arrangement, this ceasefire arrangement, who aren't guaranteed to act in good faith. And I'm thinking of the Russians.
Who's that? Okay. All right. Yeah, but I mean, look, we could continue talking for hours and hours, but there are various, as the Times has been setting out, George Grills, the defence correspondent, there are various different scenarios that could happen in terms of sort of boots on the ground, if we're to simplify it down to that much, a UN peacekeeping force, if you like, as well. But then that would require a vote in the UN Security Council. Russia and China are both members, 2 of the 5 permanent members there, so they may not agree to that. I mean, look, clearly Keir Starmer's, trying to put a line in the sand, trying to put his sort of red line down, really, in terms of this US security guarantee. I just wonder on numbers. We've been noting a very interesting tweet from Mark Urban, who contributes to Times Radio, writes in the Times as well. And he talks about the fact that limited forces are available to secure a Ukraine peace deal. Britain may offer a UK-led brigade, 5,000-ish, he says, but this is likely to be made up of a single UK battle group and contingents from other countries, of course. The other armed forces could also chip in too. It's very hard, however you do it, he says, he sort of goes on to say, to see them getting close to the 110,000 force Zelensky says he wants. Macron's exploration of this a few months ago envisaged 40,000. That feels more realistic. Are we going to see later down the line here, to sort of summarise this, Sir Peter Wall, are we going to see difficulties in what President Zelensky feels he wants and what Europe can offer?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a tension there. I think Europe lacks the wherewithal, and it might also lack the will to really front up what's necessary here. And coming to this point about how do you generate a force that can appear to be impartial, you're going to need to bring some forces in from other parts of the world. They may be able to generate the capability and the numbers. Can we then stitch that together into a workable force that can enforce a mandate?
Yeah. Look, thank you so much for speaking to us. Thank you for your wisdom across this. Sir Peter Wall, former Chief of General Staff, head of the British Army from 2010 to 2014.